All right, this morning we're picking up on our study of those days in the Holy Week, kind of Monday through Wednesday and all the happenings there. If you weren't here last week, we'd wrapped up Esther 2 weeks ago, and so we were looking for something for this gap here between the end of Esther and Easter, and we landed on what's going on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of Holy Week. You know, we spend a lot of time on Palm Sunday because that's just the time when we gather for worship anyways, so you end up learning about it through sermons and just you're part of the rhythm of Palm Sunday. And then Thursday, Friday, Sunday of Holy Week, you know, we're together in worship, and so we get those two. But there's a lot, we have a lot in all the Gospels about what's going on between those Palm Sunday and Maundy Thursday. So we decided to take a look at that, and last week we looked at the triumphal entry, but also what happens on Monday, which primarily is Jesus cleansing the temple. And so we had talked about how Jesus is forcing the hand of the people in Jerusalem to deal with and reckon with who he is. I'm not gonna allow you to ignore me. You got to figure out, am I the king or are you going to kill me? So that's kind of what we concluded and talked about last week. So today we're moving on to Tuesday of Holy Week. And there's a lot going on Tuesday and Wednesday. Like I had said last week, I mentioned maybe go read through each of these gospel accounts, and you can kind of find at the beginning of some of the sections where it says, well, and then the next morning, or it's got these clues to say, oh, it's the next day. So we've moved from Sunday to Monday, and then we've moved from Monday to Tuesday. And then you can kind of see all the different stuff that these gospel accounts have for each of these days. Monday primarily is the cleansing of the temple and the cursing of the fig tree. Now we're on to Tuesday, where we have a lot of dialogue between Jesus and the people, but also Jesus and the chief priests. And so we're going to look at some of that. But we're going to sit on Tuesday for several weeks because a lot happens. He's telling parables. We're not going to be able to tackle all the parables in one morning. He pronounces woes upon the Pharisees, the 7 woes. That's worth looking at. It's not something we're going to be able to tackle in just 1 hour. So this morning, what we're going to look at is Jesus' interaction with the chief priests, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the scribes, the elders, some of those dialogues that happen on Tuesday. So Jesus has just caused a scene, right? He's turned over the table. He's driven the money changers out of the court of Gentiles in the temple. That got everybody's attention. And now we have the chief priests who have something to say about that. So Jesus comes back into the city on Tuesday, and that's what we're going to look at. So I just want to turn your attention to your Bibles. We're going to go to Matthew 22. That's where we'll jump around a little bit, but that's where we're going to start. We'll go to Matthew 22. So Tuesday starts at about chapter 21, verse 18. We have Jesus cursing the fig tree. We have these chief priests that are questioning Jesus' authority. And then Jesus tells a couple of 3 parables, the 2 sons, the tenants, and the wedding feast. And all 3 of these parables, if I could just give a massively oversimplified summary, are: I have come, and you don't seem to be ready. The Son of Man is coming. Are you ready or are you not? It's kind of the tone of these parables. And then we have the Pharisees and Sadducees questioning Jesus. So I'm just going to read, starting in verse 15. I'm going to read 15 through 40, and then we'll just start some dialogue from there. So Matthew 22, verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. Okay, pause just for 1 second. So he's overturned the money changers. He left the city. He comes back into the city. They approach him to question his authority. Who do you think you are? And then Jesus tells these parables. Well, I'm the Son of Man, and you're just not ready for me. So now they're coming back to him after he tells these parables, and they go, okay, how are we going to... If anybody has seen season 5 of The Chosen, they do this really well in one of the episodes, where the Pharisees kind of put their heads together and go, okay, we got to get him to say something that's either going to irritate these crowds or irritate the Romans so that we can actually do something. We've already decided we want to do something about Jesus, but we either need the Jewish crowds on our side or we need the Romans to take care of it for us. So that's what, they put their heads together. They plotted how to entangle him in his words. Verse 16. And they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. The same day, the Sadducees come to him. The Sadducees different than the Pharisees. The Sadducees came to him, who say that there's no resurrection. The Sadducees come to him, and they say that there's no resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies, having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no offspring, left his wife to his brothers. So too the second and third, down to the 7th. After all of them, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her. But Jesus answered them, You are wrong, because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not God of the dead, but of the living. And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together again. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend the law and the prophets. Father, this morning we come grateful that you give us your word. It's not just a word that's about you, where we learn what you did and what you said, but you are Lord over the word. We ask that you guide our hearts and our minds, if you grant us the wisdom and the courage to see what's here, that it might affect us and change us. We need you to do it. Be with us this morning. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right. First I realized Pastor Schnocky is not here, and Pastor Reek's not here. I thought, I can let it fly. And then Pastor Rosso is here, so I got to tighten back up again. I'm just kidding. I'm glad you're here. Okay. So where should we start here? As I was kind of reading through this week and studying some things, I thought it was important, for my understanding, to learn a few new things about Pharisees and Sadducees. I think we have general understandings about the two. Some of us do. But just kind of walk through who are these 2 different groups, And does that have some insight for us as to why Jesus is speaking the way he's speaking to, or does it make sense why the Pharisees come with a certain question and the Sadducees come with a different question? I think it does, and I think that that can actually help us translate what Jesus is getting at here and apply it to 2026. I think there's some very real stuff here. So first, I think on your sheets in front of you, I bulleted some things. So Jesus confronts both parties. We've got Pharisees, we've got Sadducees. The Sadducees, let's call them ethical, non-supernatural religion. So the Sadducees, they hold to the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, but they reject the prophets, the writings, pretty much the rest of the Old Testament. They also reject oral tradition. So they go, it is the 5 books of Moses, and that's what we hold as sacred and divine. Nothing else. So if you go back and you look at that, albeit with maybe a slightly closed mind, you're going to go, I see no evidence for things like the resurrection of the dead. I see no evidence of a promised Messiah. I don't see these things. Now, keep in mind, we do, because we look back at that with the lens that we have. We look at Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. We look at these 5 books through Isaiah, through Matthew, through all of these books that teach us about the fulfillment of these prophecies. And so, but the Sadducees at that time, we're not going to look at it that way. So they reject a resurrection after death. They reject supernatural beings like angels. And they reject this prophecy of a coming Messiah. It's just not part of their religion. Their faith was practical, ethical, and tied to maintaining social order. And their worldview protected their status. Think of Sadducees as temple people, high up, wealthy. They're in Jerusalem. They're in the temple. They're not spread out across Judea, living common lives. They are elite. And they are elite because of who they are, their genealogy, their wealth. So they've gained this social status because of such things. Yeah, Angela. That's a great question. I don't actually ever hear anybody use that language anymore. I wouldn't doubt that there are Jews who follow in such traditions, but I guess I don't know. That would be something to look into. Yeah. Kim, did you have a thought? Yeah. We'll get to that. Yeah. Okay. She was asking, thank you, Dwayne. I'm sorry. I'll be better about making sure, get you time to get there. That's okay. That's okay, yeah. What we get? So she's asking about is there equivalence to today? I haven't thought through, are there, like in Judaism, are there equivalents to Pharisees and Sadducees? But I've been thinking through, are there those who that use religion and God to protect status, money, and power? So I've loosened the comparison a little bit. We'll get to that. Okay, so you got Sadducees. Then you got Pharisees.
I think there are, because in Israel and even in New York, there's the Hasidic Jews that are very, very traditional, and so there probably is a separation, because they're different than the normal Jewish population.
This might be a dumb question, but you said they don't believe in angels, but angels are mentioned in Genesis. I mean, so do they just kind of pick and choose out of those 5 books, or?
Well, I'm going to jump in and throw a question of the future in. If I remember correctly, Enoch is mentioned in the first 5 books of the Bible, and it says God took him to heaven. In your research, did you find anything about their thinking on that?
No, I didn't, but you guys sound like Pharisees. In a good way. In the good way, actually. Yeah.
They're of course, they're temple people, right? And so the temple got destroyed in 70 AD, so there wouldn't be really any need. Well, I mean, they might still wish for if they were still around, they'd be like wishing for a third temple, probably, but they probably aren't really practicing, or they've changed their ways, probably. So.
Yeah, those are all good and worth looking into. Give that a Google this week. I don't know what the current status of Jews who would describe themselves as Sadducees and hold to such similar beliefs. But so the Pharisees would have been doing exactly what your questions just did. You guys are crazy. The resurrection's all over the place. Of course there's angels. And so there was a lot of butting heads between these two groups. Their unity prior to Jesus, which we'll talk about in a second, their unity was in maintaining religious, political order among the Jews, the nation of Israel. But the Pharisees are kind of the flip side of the coin. Let's call them moralistic, conservative religion. So where the Sadducees are more distant, elevated, elite kind of thinkers, the Pharisees, they would have been out running the synagogues. So they're all over the diaspora, which hasn't happened yet, but they're all over where there are Jews, there are Pharisees that are in synagogues that are teaching, preaching among the Jews. They believed in a resurrection because they hold all of the Old Testament, the Ketuvim, the Torah, the writings, the prophets, everything we have as an Old Testament, they held and believed. So they believe in a resurrection. They believe in a coming kingdom. They saw obedience to the law as the way to remain in God's favor. So the Sadducees might not have been thinking about obedience as a way to earn God's favor, because they're not so worried about that. There's no resurrection of the dead. I don't have eyes on post-death whatever. The Pharisees do. The Pharisees are very concerned with God's justice and his judgment. It's coming. I believe it's coming. How do I get on the right side of that? For them, it was obedience to the law. So their worldview protected their moral achievement. So Pharisees, very much concerned with the morality of the people. Again, sorry, my brain keeps going to The Chosen. In the beginning of The Chosen, the first season, I think it might have even been the first episode, where Nicodemus, a Pharisee teacher, is in Capernaum, sitting down in front of other Pharisees and other people, and going, "Hey, you guys are going out and fishing on Sabbath so you can avoid taxes. If you think God's going to be kind to you while you're abusing the Sabbath, better fix that. I'm not going to eat those fish." So they're very concerned with the morality. Yeah, Lonnie? Here, 1 second. Dwayne's.
This information is kind of a form of AI, so you can take it for worth whatever it is, but it says the Pharisees as a distinct group ceased to exist after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. However, their teachings and beliefs significantly influenced the development of Rabbinic Judaism, which is the foundation of modern Jewish practice.
So there aren't those who would walk around calling themselves Pharisees or Sadducees. However, there are still those within the religion of Judaism who carry on those traditions.
I know the kids in school are taught an easy way for them to remember. The Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection. They are sad, you see? And the Pharisees are, just, you're doing this wrong. They're not fair, you see.
Beautiful.
Have a good rest of the week. It's great. Just write that down. Okay, that's good. I like that. Sad, you see. Okay, so you could see how in theological debate, in how are we governing our nation of Israel from our station, there's going to be a lot of butting of heads. We just disagree about these really important, big questions. And so the Pharisees are asking the questions that we were asking as I describe what they believe, and they're going to ask the same questions back. And I'm sure they both had their interpretive reasons of the text to get where they got. But now, 2,000 years later, we can look back and go, ooh, their motives are pretty clear. It would make sense that if I am an elite within my religious, political spectrum, just because I was born into it, I'm going to try and protect that. If I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps and study and study and study and achieve my way to learning enough things and be the best of the best so that I could be a Pharisee, a rabbi, and teach other people, kind of makes sense that my worldview is going to be very, pull myself up by my bootstraps. You should too, and if you don't, then that's on you. Kind of a mindset. So anyway, they're butting heads over things. The only thing where they would come together on is protecting the structure of what's built for the nation of Israel until Jesus comes along. And it's a little bit maybe the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. They're both looking at what Jesus is doing and teaching and saying, that is threatening to what we've built and what I have. So the Sadducees are threatened by Jesus because he's threatening their power and he's denying their worldview. Jesus is very much speaking about a resurrection. The Sadducees going to be upset when somebody is gathering crowds by the thousands and teaching them about a resurrection? Probably. The Pharisees, on the other hand, are threatened that Jesus is threatening their righteousness and exposing their self-reliance. We talked about that a little bit with the clearing of the temple. That might be the moment that the Pharisees really get going. Is he calling us hypocrites? Brood of vipers? Snakes? We're the ones who aren't hypocrites. You're the hypocrites who don't live the way that we live. So both are being, and I got this paradigm from Tim Keller. He talks about this and says, if you think about in theological terms, not necessarily political terms. There are some correlants, but think of this, I'm going to use these polarizing words, so bear with me. I'm using them in theological terms. Think of the Sadducees as the liberal left, of theology. God is love. There's no resurrection or anything, but our God is good and he's loving and all this kind of thing. And then you think of the Pharisees as the conservative right, theologically. So you pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, you got to do the right things. And Jesus threatens both, but he's not doing it from the middle. I put a quote on there from Keller. So you got these liberals, they heard Jesus and thought they smelled a conservative. You got the Sadducees who hear the things that Jesus is saying and is going, that guy's on the right, he's my enemy, I need to attack what he's saying and believe. Yet the Pharisees somehow, on the other side, on the right side, are also looking at Jesus saying, I'm a conservative and I'm smelling liberal talk. But oddly enough, he's not actually in the middle. He's not some passive moderate in the middle. He's not theologically, politically in the middle of left and right. he's off the paradigm. Well, our God is good and loving in all ways, and you should not question that. Okay, but Jesus is preaching things that are kind of hard for us to grasp and understand, and it challenges that thinking. But it's not because he's right of the left. It's because he's actually, I'm a God who's actually even more loving than what you think I am. And on the other side, our God is just. He's morally just and good, and so you need to do moral and just things to earn his favor. They look at Jesus and they go, Jesus is left of that. We need to attack what Jesus is saying because it's not in line with us, but he's not left of that, he's outside of that. He says, I am a God who's actually even more just than you think. I actually have a higher standard than you even think that I have. So high that all of your morality couldn't even achieve that. So it's interesting, like Jesus is, of course, Jesus is going to irritate all of these people who think they have it figured out. When we think we have it figured out, Jesus is going to threaten what we think we have figured out. Nancy, what?
To fulfill all the prophecies and set himself up for death, because this is going to, he knows the story, he knows the end of the story because he's God. And he's got to raise these people to the highest level of anger to make it happen on the right day. Right? Because Passover is coming. And that's the plan. And he's aware. So this is feeding into God's plan, because he is in control.
You're right. We talked about that last week a little bit, about how Jesus is actually orchestrating here. He's orchestrated his triumphal entry. Who were the people that were with him? What were they doing? What gate were they going into? It's a plan. He's aware that now is the time for me to say the true things that I've been saying more cryptically in the past, but now I need to say them more directly. And yes, that's going to lead to something. And now it's Tuesday, so we're getting closer to Passover. The Jews, I haven't worked out the math in my head or anything, but it seems as though the Jews are running out of time to take action. If they were to indict Jesus for, call it blasphemy, or whatever it is they were going to do, there are laws that say he can go through a process, a trial, that takes a certain amount of time. We're running up on Passover. You can't conduct trials and things on Passover. So these Jews are going, oh, okay, we're going to get to a point where we can't do this legally, so we need to get the Romans on board, or whatever the case may be. But Jesus, yes, you're exactly right. Jesus is well aware of what he's doing. He's confronting them with the truth, and he's aware that this truth is going to mean okay. So Jesus refuses both categories, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. So just as a premise, as we go look at the dialogues that he has with them, keep this in mind. You've got the Pharisees who are very, very concerned with moralistic living. We have a God who is just, and so you better get on the right side of the law. The Sadducees going, justice, whatever. That's not the case. So Jesus is confronting and refuses both of those categories. So let's go to Matthew 21. I'm going to read from verse 15 again. The Pharisees went and plotted to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true, and you teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Okay, let me pause there. Does that sounds like a little bit of flattery? Could be sarcastic flattery. You could interpret it that way, maybe. It could be, hey, here's a guy who's going around teaching that there is a resurrection, that we do have a God of justice who does care about how we live. It could be, hey, this guy's a little bit more on our team than he is on their team. So let's at least get a word in on that. Yeah? Dwayne, you have a thought?
From the flattery aspect, tradition tells us that the Pharisees had very fancy robes. They had little bells on the bottom of their lapel. And from what we hear and read, they looked sharp. They were sharp dressers.
So Jesus doesn't care so much about that. Yeah. Verse 17. Tell us then, that being the case, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Pharisees are very concerned with what is religiously lawful. Is it lawful to pay taxes to a Caesar who thinks he's a god? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Jesus, aware of their malice, said, why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. It tells us at the beginning of that they're doing this to trap him. They want to entangle him in his words so that either the Jewish people get really upset or the Romans hear something that they need to hear to take action on him. What a perfect question. Yeah, Brian's got a thought. What a perfect question. He's either going to say, no, that Caesar's awful. You don't need to pay taxes to Caesar, and create a problem. The Romans are going to take action. Or he's going to say, pay your taxes to Caesar. And then the people get upset, and now we're trying to stir the pot. So you can see what the Pharisees trying to do.
I think I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like when Jesus says, you hypocrites, like he's referring to like, okay, if you have a coin on you that has an image of Caesar, claiming that he's God, well then right there you're like you shouldn't have that coin on you, but it's kind of like something that they wouldn't have ever done is to carry that coin because it just says that you believe in another God than the correct one.
Think about, they would exchange those for a temple coin in the temple when they would purchase sacrifices and things at an upcharge so they could get more of the Roman money, so they could use the Roman money. You're already, but there is a slight, there shouldn't be any sympathy there, but that's the world you live in. Rome occupies you. You don't have a choice. Like, that's the money that exists. On the coin, again, if you've watched The Chosen, they depict this scene and they speak about, Jesus says, he makes the Sadducee tell him what's on the coin, which it says in Latin, I believe, Tiberius Caesar, son of God, or son of the God, something like that. And so they say, well, how can you, so using this money, paying taxes to a man like that, who thinks he's God, that would be you conceding that that's true. And what Jesus is saying, render unto Caesar which is Caesar's, and that which to God that is God's, is Jesus actually saying, just because the coin on this piece of metal, somebody stamped it with the words, Tiberius Caesar, son of God, doesn't make it true, but what is true is that God cares so much less about your taxes and your money. He cares about you and your heart. What is God's? This piece of metal that's shaped into a little circle with a face on it? Yes. But what is God's? This or you? You Pharisees have not recognized that you have a God who loves you and cares so much more about you, so much so that I am here to die because I want you, and you're concerned with who I pay taxes to. And the taxes aren't also bad, right? The Romans build us roads and keep order and, right? I mean, you want to translate that to today? Is it wrong to pay taxes to our United States government? Exactly. But it's a loaded question. I think what Jesus is saying is, yes, I understand. It's a loaded question. We live in a sinful world. Let's stop with these questions that are already hypocritical by nature. And let's be more concerned with, do I have your heart? Yeah.
Going back to if there's Pharisees and Sadducees, many, many years ago, we were on a cruise, and this is long ago when you were assigned a table with another couple, and you ate with them breakfast, noon, and evening with that place, not like the cruises today. You sit whenever you want, eat whenever you want. Wouldn't you know, we were assigned to a Jewish couple. Very interesting discussions. She was working on her Hebrew, and so I think they were the more liberal. There's the ascetic and the reformed, and is there another one in between? I don't know. But anyway, she was working on her Hebrew because when they got back, she had to read in the service in Hebrew. So she's working on her Hebrew, and I'm thinking, here's a woman reading the Hebrew in that. So, and I had no indication that there was Pharisees, Sadducees, or anything like that. Yeah, and that's a long time ago, so my memory isn't the world's best either. But that was 6 days whenever we were on that cruise, and we tried to talk about Jesus, and it was like, don't bring that up. Okay, that's my comment.
Isn't that interesting that that's still alive today? That there are people who are obviously in the Jewish tradition religiously. I think what my mind goes to is Jesus changes everything. Jesus changed everything for. Do you think that the Jewish people at that time, do you think the Pharisees had a clear picture of how to answer that question? What did the Pharisees, how would a Pharisee?
In Mark, it's called an imperial tax. And in my footnote, it says that the Jews had to pay it, but the people in Rome did not. This was set just for their country. I didn't realize that until I read that. But it says, the tax was highly unpopular, and some Jews flatly refused to pay it, believing that payment was an admission of Roman right to rule. And they were resisting all Roman stuff. Sure.
Do you ever have a moment where your brain goes to you catch a glimpse of the truth and you go, I think there's something there, but I need to spend more time thinking about it before I say anything? Do you agree with everything your local, state, or federal government does? Okay, we can stop there. We don't have to go further. But is it an endorsement of everything that gets done at those levels to pay your tax? You ever thought about that, Dan?
I've been sitting here just listening to the conversations and things like this, and the thought comes to my mind, it's really easy to talk about them, those Pharisees, those Sadducees, okay? We could almost call them in some ways Democrats and Republicans, and we get along just as well. We don't care about the truth. We care about my way.
So I think if we bring this all to a head, what I would challenge is so let's pull it to 2026 and recognize that there are pulls to all kinds of things. And it's more complicated than just I'm solely over here, I'm solely over here. It's on the issue or whatever. When it comes to resurrection, they were on different sides. When it came to obedience to the law, they might have been a little bit closer, but maybe still butt heads about things. Bring that into 2026. When you read this, are you reading about a Jesus who affirms everything you believe? If that's the case, you need to get that little Men in Black clicker and just erase everything and then reread it. Jesus confronts all of these things. Jesus is an extremely nuanced teacher. Well, that's not true. Jesus is a very direct and clear teacher, and it comes and confronts our extremely nuanced views, politically, religiously, or otherwise. Do I read through the scriptures, the things that Jesus taught, the things that Paul teaches and otherwise, and go, whoa, wow, everything in my synod is perfectly biblical. Wow, every political view I hold is exactly what Jesus would think today. Or does it confront it? I'm not saying everything is, but is everything on the table to be confronted by Jesus in your life? For Jesus to go, it's actually more complicated than that and simpler than that. Another Tim Keller thought is he had this thing that kind of came to him. He said, it's interesting that in our political system, if you kind of look at some of the things that our political parties champion, if you go over to the Democrat side of things, they have things like care for the poor. We might disagree with how they would go about that. I'm going to use we, them language a little bit. I'm going to use them language. Care for the poor, and what was the other thing? That seems to be what the left would say. That's something that we do. We make decisions because we want to care for people, and racial justice. That's what those two things are really important to us. And then you go to the political right, and you might hear, well, sanctity of life and sexual ethics. Those are two things that we care a lot about. Are any of those four things bad things? No, I think those are all four ethics that securely fall under the umbrella of Jesus. Absolutely. Does Jesus say we should care for the poor? Does Jesus say there's no Jew nor Greek nor male nor female? We are all one in Christ. Does he care about racial injustice? Absolutely. Does Jesus care about life and about children? I think so. Does Jesus care about how we live out our lives sexually? And then we just split them. Well, they care more about that, and I don't like how they go about it, so I'm going to stand over here and attack it. And they've kind of grabbed that thing, so I'm going to stand over here, and that's not so much what I care. We naturally polarize ourselves. Why? Because we want to be right. It's exactly what's happening with these Sadducees and Pharisees, all in their little Jewish microcosm. And Jesus steps in the middle of it, not because he's in the middle, but he steps between them and he says, what's true is true, and I am here, and I want you. And I'm not saying he doesn't care about the issue. He clearly believes in the resurrection. He clearly believes that we have an obligation to submit to authority. He cares about how we live out our moral lives. But stop grabbing these ethics of kingdom living and pulling them to your side and using them as a weapon against other people. I care so much more about you seeing who I am than about you fighting over the things that I've taught you. We got stuck on that. Now is it worth reading the next ones? The same day the Sadducees, verse 23, the same day the Sadducees came to him, who say that there's no resurrection, and they asked him a question. Teacher, Moses said if a man dies, having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no offspring, left his wife to his brother. So too the second and the third down to the 7th. After them all, the woman died. So in the resurrection, therefore, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her. So there's a law. So in Deuteronomy 25, it talks about levirate marriage, where a widow in that time, in that kind of economy, an agrarian society, if a woman had no children and was widowed, she's in a tough spot. She can't just go out and find work. She doesn't have a family or someone to care about them. And so there was a Jewish law that said, if you have a brother, he is to take you in as a wife, to bear children with you, and those children will be the deceased brother's line. Sadducees look at this as a very pragmatic thing. They're looking at it politically, societally, to go, we can't just have all these widows out here living on the street begging us for our money. We need to have a system governmentally for them to be, they're thinking of it pragmatically. And then they get their little jab in there about, okay, in the resurrection, this pragmatism doesn't make any sense. What do we do with that in the resurrection? So there's 2 sides of this going on. Jesus says, you're wrong. You are wrong. Because you neither know the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, you don't not only do you don't believe in the resurrection, you don't understand it. You don't understand what I'm resurrecting you to. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. So there's here's another little thing you don't believe in that I'm going to answer your question with. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? Now he's using 2 scriptures in Deuteronomy and then in Exodus, I believe. So two scriptures that the Sadducees hold sacred. So he's not arguing with something that's outside of what they believe. He's using their belief to argue against them. I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. And that God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. What do you think of that? What's that?
I think that he's still God of the dead also. Still God of the dead also.
But does the things that God is God of, do they stay dead? God is a God who kills to make alive. He draws them low so he can raise them up. He did it himself. I'm going to condescend from the right hand of the Father to become a baby, totally helpless. I need my own creation to care for me because I'm a baby. And then I'm going to orchestrate things so that I actually die. My creation is actually going to care for me as an infant and then kill me as an adult. I'm going to die, actually die. God died. Why? So that he can make alive. And he wants to do that for them too. Do you think there's we get this tone from Jesus in this last week that he's very confrontational, and he is. I'm going to put the truth in front of you, and I'm going to make you deal with it. These things that you have been so convinced are true that just aren't. You are wrong. Because you just don't get it. And you don't get me. You don't get what I said, and you don't get how I'm bigger than you could possibly imagine. I am more just, Pharisees, than you could possibly imagine. You think you can fulfill my law? You can't. Not because you don't do some of these things well, but because my justice is so much higher than you could possibly imagine, you could never fulfill it. And my love is so big, Sadducees. I am so much bigger than you could possibly imagine. I love you so much that I want to resurrect the dead. Not just I don't want to resurrect you from the dead so that you can have life with me. I'm actually going to go die so that you can have it. So I think the theme of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and it'll keep going, is that we have a Jesus who loves us so much. He's so big, he's so powerful, he's so loving, he's so just, that he is going to confront the places that you're wrong. I think there's two things to that. He loves you so much to let you be wrong. And when we go, no, I get it. I see that you're confronting me, and I see that you're telling me I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. He's going to save you anyway. Do I have to be right about everything? Do I have to understand everything that the Scriptures say? And do I have to fully understand the power of God, which I can't understand, to be saved? No. He saves us anyway. So I think I see two things from this week. He is going to confront us. He will not let our idolatry stand. And when we continue to fail in idolatry, he's going to go to a cross to save us anyway. What do you got, Kim?
I guess I just kind of see it as a real simple term by saying he had to put things back on track. You know, everything was off kilter, and he, like you said, he came and confronted it and put things back on track. But we're all back off track again. You know, we keep getting off track, but then again, through history, he keeps coming in, and bad things happen, and the people come back to him again, then we wander, and then bad things happen, and so it is. So what's our next on track? It's maybe the end, I don't know.
We're still learning.
I have a thought. What's our next back on track? The cross. It's the cross. Is all of these little confrontations throughout our lives. We stray, he confronts it, it's painful, he brings us back. We stray, he confronts us, it's painful, he brings us back. Why does he do that? Because he wants you to see that he loves you, and I'm going to point you to the cross to show you the fullness of that love. You don't have to fix all your problems because I've already done that. And because I've done that, I care about how you're living today. I care about what your life looks like because I want better things for you than you even want for yourself. I'm gonna allow you to suffer in some part the way I suffered, because that's what points you back to the truth of this. I'm going to confront you so that your eyes come back to the cross. The confrontation is not just so that the Pharisees and the Sadducees fix their policy. He's not leaving this to go, okay, now I want you to go back and I want you to rewrite your tax policy as a nation. Or I want you to go back and I want you to get your theology right on the resurrection. I want you to look at all the scriptures, fix that. I'm confronting it so that you have to confront yourself and then look at me. I'm the answer to all of these problems in your life. And that's why I'm here and I'm moving towards the cross. Death and resurrection. So maybe this week we think about that. What are the places where I've been so adamant that I am right? To the extent where I look at other people and go, man, it's crazy how wrong you are. I cannot believe how you're still wrong about that. Look at all the evidence. And instead go, okay, Jesus, what do you want to say about that? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read my Bible. What does Jesus have to say? How does he confront all the ways that I've gotten arrogant in the things that I think and believe? That takes time and it's painful. And he will do it. Please don't hear me saying, hey, you got to let Jesus confront all the different problems you have and fix them so that you can get to heaven. That's what the Pharisees were doing. He's saying, I want you to let me in to confront all these little things in your life, not just so you can fix them, but so that in that weakness you'll see my strength. You'll have no choice but to surrender yourself to me who's paid for and redeemed all these problems. What do you got, Gil?
I'm just wondering, did they believe in eternity? Because at resurrection, God is of the living in hell. They believe in hell. In hell, they won't be peaceful dead. They're still going to be alive for eternity in hell. The same in heaven for eternity. So that's the resurrection. You either go one way or the other, and that's where the cross comes in.
Yeah, you know, that's a good question, and I'll have to plead ignorance. I don't know exactly what they would have thought about the concept of eternity. You might have had Sadducees saying, "Yeah, eternity's happening. I die. I'm not going to be there. I'm not resurrected to life in some kind of way." Where, Gil, you did it this time. We're out of time, and that's something that would take a long time to unpack. This resurrection, this bodily resurrection. You look at Jesus' teachings, you look at Paul's teachings. It's not some ethereal, theorized version of you die and now your consciousness or is up there floating. He's saying, okay, there's a mystery here. Upon death, you are with me. Today you will be with me in paradise. And on the last day, there will be a bodily resurrection where you will be in a physical place of paradise, the new heavens and the new earth. And so when you look back to what the Pharisees and the Sadducees would have believed, it's probably a whole soup of different things. So I don't know what they would think about eternity, but what Jesus is coming to say is that you're you, and you're going to die, and I'm going to make you alive so that you can be with me. I'm going to die, and I'm going to be made alive for eternity. So the resurrection and eternity might not have always gone hand in hand for the Pharisees and Sadducees. Thanks for that. Okay, next week, Pastor Bill's going to be with us. He's going to talk about the 7 woes. So come back. Jesus, thanks for another morning where we get to come and gather around your word, talk about you, learn more about it. Please confront us where we need to get confronted. That's a terrifying prayer, because that's often a painful thing. So in time and with your gentle hand, confront us and point us back to you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.